Hey everyone! Today we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating stories in world history. A story about a small island nation that went from total isolation to becoming one of the most advanced and influential countries on the planet. This is the entire history of Japan, from ancient kingdoms and samurai wars to global superpower status.
Japan, the land of the rising sun. Today, it's famous for its neon-lit cities, incredible technology, timeless traditions, and breathtaking natural beauty. But what most people don't realize is that Japan wasn't always so open to the world. For more than 2 centuries, from the 1600s to the mid-1800s, Japan literally closed its borders to outsiders. This era, known as Sakoku, saw the nation develop a vibrant, unique culture almost entirely on its own, a time that gave birth to many of Japan's most iconic traditions that still live on today. But how did Japan go from an isolated feudal society to a modern global powerhouse? Let's rewind 40,000 years.
The islands that make up modern Japan have been home to humans since prehistoric times, when the first settlers arrived from mainland Asia. They brought with them early farming, metalworking, and the foundations of what would become permanent settlements, and eventually kingdoms. By the 3rd century AD, southern Japan had coalesced around a centralized authority, the Yamato state, led by a monarch known as the emperor. Japan's early history was heavily shaped by influence from nearby Asia. In 552, Buddhism was introduced from Korea. Then, in 645, Japan underwent the Taika reforms, reshaping its government to mirror China's imperial system, complete with a royal court that moved from place to place with each new emperor. That all changed in 794, when Emperor Kanmu made the court's home permanent, founding the new capital at Heian, modern-day Kyoto. This marked the start of the Heian period, a golden age of art, literature, and aristocratic life that lasted nearly 400 years. But over time, the imperial court became more interested in politics and luxury than actual governance. Power began slipping away and into the hands of local lords and powerful warrior families. Thus began Japan's feudal era.
As the emperor's grip weakened, regional clans like the Taira and Minamoto rose to power. In 1180, they clashed in a brutal conflict known as the Genpei War, which ended 5 years later with victory for the Minamoto clan. Their leader, Minamoto no Yoritomo, established a new military government in Kamakura, far from the imperial court. In 1192, the emperor granted Yoritomo the title of shogun, making him the de facto ruler of Japan, and officially beginning the shogunate system that would last for the next 700 years.
In the 13th century, Japan faced an existential threat, the Mongol Empire. In 1274, Kublai Khan sent a massive invasion fleet, but the samurai fought fiercely, and then nature intervened. A massive typhoon, later called the kamikaze, or divine wind, destroyed the Mongol fleet. When the Mongols tried again in 1281, another typhoon wiped them out once more. Japan was saved, but the cost nearly bankrupted the shogunate. With samurai unpaid and unrest brewing, Emperor Go-Daigo tried to seize back power in 1333. He succeeded, but only for 5 years, until Ashikaga Takauji overthrew him and restored the shogunate, beginning the Ashikaga or Muromachi era. However, the real power rested not with the shogun, but with local warlords known as daimyo. These daimyo constantly schemed, fought, and formed shifting alliances. By 1467, their rivalries exploded into open war, the Onin War, which shattered Japan's feudal order and plunged the country into chaos. This period became known as the Sengoku, or Warring States period, a century of civil war, ninjas, warrior monks, and betrayal. Then, in 1543, a shipwreck changed everything. A Portuguese trading vessel drifted onto the island of Tanegashima, bringing the first Europeans and guns to Japan. Within a few decades, over 300,000 firearms were in use across the islands. Along with trade came Christianity, which spurred quickly, though it also created new tensions. One daimyo who used these new weapons to great effect was Oda Nobunaga. He nearly unified Japan until his sudden death in 1582. His successor, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, finished the job. Hideyoshi, a brilliant general from humble origins, became the de facto ruler of a unified Japan, though he never took the title of shogun. When he died in 1598, power struggles erupted once again. In 1600, Tokugawa Ieyasu emerged victorious at the Battle of Sekigahara, founding the Tokugawa shogunate, ushering in over 2 centuries of peace, known as the Edo period. Under the Tokugawa, Japan enjoyed stability, growth, and an explosion of culture, from ukiyo-e woodblock prints to kabuki theater. But the peace came at a price: strict social control, class divisions, and the suppression of Christianity. By 1639, Japan had completely shut itself off from the world under the Sakuku policy. Foreigners were banned, Japanese were forbidden to leave, and trade was limited to China, Korea, and a handful of Dutch merchants confined to a small artificial island, Dejima, in Nagasaki Bay. For more than 200 years, Japan thrived in isolation. Its population doubled, cities grew, and its economy prospered. But by the 1800s, the system was starting to crack. Famine, corruption, and stagnation weakened the shogunate, and whispers of Western science and technology began to circulate through smuggled Dutch books. Then, in 1853, everything changed. Commodore Matthew Perry of the U.S. Navy arrived in Edo Bay with a fleet of warships, demanding Japan open its ports to American trade or face military consequences. With no way to resist, the Tokugawa shogunate reluctantly agreed, signing treaties with the U.S., Britain, and Russia. To many Japanese, this was a humiliation. Outrage spread across the nation, and by 1868, samurai from Choshu and Satsuma provinces led a rebellion that toppled the shogunate in what became known as the Meiji Restoration.
The emperor was restored to power, the capital moved to Tokyo, and Japan launched into a crash course of modernization. Railways, telegraphs, and modern schools appeared almost overnight. Western advisors helped redesign everything from the army to the economy. Japan's new conscript army crushed the Satsuma Rebellion in 1877, ending the samurai era once and for all. Japan then turned outward. After annexing Hokkaido and the Ryukyu Islands, it defeated China in 1895, seizing Taiwan. In 1905, Japan shocked the world by defeating Russia in the Russo-Japanese War, becoming the first Asian nation in modern times to defeat a European power. By 1910, Japan annexed Korea and stood as a major world power.
During World War I, Japan sided with the Allies and gained new territories. But in the decades that followed, nationalism and militarism began to rise. In 1937, Japan invaded China again, sparking the Second Sino-Japanese War. Tensions with the United States grew, leading to crippling economic sanctions. Desperate for resources, Japan struck first, launching a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. The Pacific War had begun.
For 4 brutal years, the Allies fought Japan across the Pacific, island by island, until finally, in August 1945, the U.S. dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing over 100,000 people. Japan surrendered days later.
After the war, Japan was occupied by Allied forces led by General Douglas MacArthur. Its military was dismantled, its government democratized, and Emperor Hirohito was forced to renounce his divine status. Under Prime Minister Shigeru Yoshida, Japan rebuilt, focusing entirely on economic growth rather than military power. By the 1950s, Japan's economy had recovered. By the 1960s, it was booming. By the 1980s, Japan had become a technological superpower, home to world-famous automakers, electronics giants, and a culture that fascinated the world. Today, Japan stands as one of the most prosperous, innovative, and peaceful nations on Earth. A country that rose from centuries of war, isolation, and even atomic devastation to become a global leader in science, art, and industry. It's a story of resilience, transformation, and reinvention, and proof that even after the darkest chapters in history, a nation can be reborn.